Hello everyone, welcome back. This is the fourth session we are discussing about the Java. Till yesterday we have discussed about Java fundamentals, keywords, constants, variables, data types, methods, and some part of methods we have discussed. So we need to continue with the method calling statements. After that we discuss about statements, operators, expressions, comments, identifiers, and then flow control. So these are the topics that we are going to discuss. So basically, we define methods. We define methods for a specific purpose. So methods are used to group the statements. Methods is used to group the statements in Java code. So when you want to write a group of statements or a block of statements, you need to enclose it inside the flower braces. So every line of code should end with semicolon. Every line of code should end with semicolon. So why we are writing this method? We want to execute these number of lines. It says statement 1, statement 2, statement 3. Like this, there might be n number of statements, right? So if we want to execute a bunch of these statements as one flow, and instead of writing these number of lines multiple times in Java program, what we do is we write the common executable statements into one block and we give a name to that block. This is called as method. Okay, this is called as method. So obviously we have discussed yesterday, right? So when method definition, we have to give the access levels, non-access levels, return type, method name, arguments, flower brackets open and flower brackets close. So every statement that we want to make this part of method, we have to write inside the flower brackets. So the main, what we are achieving with the methods, we are achieving reusability. Reusability is one of the feature. Reusability is one of the feature of method. You write a method once, you can use that method, you can call that method any number of times. In other words, you can reuse the same code hundreds of times to execute whenever you need. How many number of times you need, you can execute the same. That is why we use method. So while using methods, we have two steps. Step number 1 is define method in Java class. Step number 2, call the method. Call the method which is defined. What happens if I don't define and I call? What happens if I don't define and I call? Compile time error. If we try to call a method which is not defined, in Java class, then it gives compile time error. Compile time error. Gives compile time error. If we try to call a method without defining it inside the Java class, then it will give compile time error. It will give compile time error. So can we do other way around? We define a method and we cannot call. We don't want to call. Can we do it? Can we define a method but not call? Yes, it is possible. It is not necessary to call the method if it is not required. If it is not required to be executed. If it's not to be executed, then don't call it. It will not complain anything. But if you want to call it and you don't define it, it will definitely give compile time error. Okay. So in other words, what we do in method we do perform some business logic. We do perform some business logic. We do perform some business logic. For example, performing addition. Performing addition can be one kind of a business logic. So which is a common operation when you do deposit of money into your bank. I mean bank account. Okay. Performing addition is one of the simplest use case we can take. This is a business logic. So everything relevant to the business logic is written inside this particular method. Everything related to business logic is written inside the method. So a method is to perform one business logic. What happens if you want to write more logics? Yes, you can write, but it is not the best way of writing. So best way of writing is you write a method and do only one task, one logic in that method. Do only one task or one logic of that method. Okay. So what can we perform using methods? First one is method definition. Example, I'll take the example and I'll show you method definition. And second one is method calling. Method definition and method calling. So I want to perform addition. Let me write a simple code. So every Java code should start with a class. I'm getting started with class. Then add int, add int. This is a class I want to write. And inside this class, I need to perform, I need to execute the program. So I need to write public static void main string args open and close, open and close. This is place where method execution or Java program execution is started. This is the place where Java program execution is started. And this is the place where Java program is ended. Program execution is ended. Okay, in between whatever you write, it is going to execute each line by line. Each line by line, as we have already discussed, each line should end with semicolon. Each line will end with semicolon. So I want to write add method. Okay, this is a calling method. I want to pass 5 and 7. I want to pass 5 and 7. So what are these two things? These two are called as arguments or parameters. Arguments are parameters. These are also known as variables. Also known as variables. How do we define variables? Data type and variable name, right? So we need to define a method with arguments. What is a method name? Add. Add is a method name. So let me write add method, add method. So it has to indicate like method, right? So we need to add round brackets open and close and flower brackets open and close. So we are passing values as an inputs to this method. That is why it is called as argument. That is why it is called as argument. It will ask for values. It will ask for values. That's why it is called as argument. Arguing for values. Okay, give this information. That's why we call it as arguments. So how many arguments we are passing? 2 arguments. What are the data types of these 2 arguments? Integers. So first one integer I need to take into one variable. Let's say A. Another one I will take it into B. So if I am passing 5 comma 7, 5 will be stored in A and 7 will be stored in B. For example, if I write A, B, C, int A, int B and int C. Now what will happen if I try to compile this? It should give compile time error because it is looking for a method with 2 arguments or 2 parameters. But whereas this method is asking for 3 parameters, 3 arguments. So if you don't pass 3 arguments, 3 values, it will give compile time error. So forcefully you are supposed to give third value if the method input is 3 arguments. If the method is taking 3 arguments, then you need to pass those many number of arguments. So 5 is stored in A, 7 is stored in B. 5 is stored in A and 7 is stored in B. And then our regular public static void. Public static void. So this is how we define a method. Now inside this we will write the logic system dot out dot println of A plus B, A plus B, A plus B. So we are writing a method. So we are writing a method, add method, and we are calling that method inside the main method. So we are passing 5 comma 7. 5 value is stored in A, 7 value is stored in B. So when we perform A plus B, that value is, the result is passed to system.out.println. So this statement is again nothing but calling statement to method. Calling statement to which method? Println. Calling statement to println method. Calling statement to println method. So now what happens when we try to compile this code and execute? When we try to compile this code and execute, right? Let me compile this code for you. Let me compile this code for you. Save the file. As you already know the process very well, we need to save it as .java as extension. Compile this file using javac command .java, add into .java. Compilation is successful because I have not written any syntactical errors here. So the compilation is successful. To execute Java, add int. So let us first execute logically and see what is the output when we execute. So first it is going to see class syntax, class name, flower brackets open, and inside that public static void main, all are in small case only as expected. String args. So now main method is actually as expected. So main method is found and it will be executing. So it is going to start the execution from the main method block start. This is a method block start and this is a method block end. So it's going to start execution from this line onwards and it keeps executing. So when we write like this is called as a comment. This is called as a comment, which means compiler is going to ignore whatever you write in this place. It is not going to compile. It is not going to execute. Then we are calling method add 5 comma 7. So when the compiler sees this thing, it will try to find, is there any matching method inside this class as add, which will take two values as arguments, as arguments. So it will try to find matching method definition. And surprisingly, it is having public, static, void, and add, which will take two values as arguments, and that values are used in performing the addition. And at the same time, we are trying to print onto the screen, print onto the console. So systems.out.println of A plus B. So this is a perfectly valid syntax. It will compile and it will execute. Since we are passing 5 comma 7, 5 value is stored in A, 7 value is stored in B. And we are trying to print A plus B, which means these variables will be replaced with the values. While performing this addition, the variable will be replaced with value. What is the value of A? A value is 5. That 5 value will be here. Plus B value is 7. So 7 is taken here. 5 plus 7, 12. So it should print 12 as an output. right? So this is how the program execution will happen. This is how the program execution will happen. Okay, everybody clear on this topic now? If everybody is clear on this topic,
Yes, sir.
you can tell me what will happen now. I will compile this code. I will run this code. Can you tell me what is the output? Will it compile first?
No, sir. Since you added those dashes, it won't consider those lines.
Okay, so it won't consider, which means it is not possible to get executed, right?
The add line won't be considered.
Correct. If it won't consider, what will happen? Will it compile? Will it run? Will it compile and run successfully? Then what will be the output if it is compiled and run successfully? This is my question. Compile success. As I told you earlier, you can define a method, but you may not call it, right? I asked you things. Can we define a method but not call it? Yes. If it is not, if it is not necessary to call them, if it is not necessary to call, then not required, not required to be executed. It is not required to be executed. Then, so I am defining a method, but I'm not calling the method. This is perfectly valid. This is perfectly valid, right? So when you define a method, when you define a method, when you define a method, you can define it with no arguments or with one argument, or with two arguments, or with n number of arguments, or with n number of arguments. So based on the number of arguments, you can call that method. If it is one argument method, one arg method. When you are having one argument, if you have two arguments, it's two arg method. If there are n number of arguments, then you can call it as n arg method. So these arguments are inputs to the, these arguments are inputs to the method. These arguments acts as inputs to the method. Inputs to the method. And we can call one method in another method. We call one method in another method. Only that we need to pass exact values, what it asks, what is it arguing for, how many number of arguments is it looking for. We have to pass those many arguments. That is the requirement. Okay? Is it clear? So what happens when you write program like this? What happens when you write program like this? So I don't want to make you confused, so I'll remove all of these unnecessary lines. So I'll make it much simpler for you. Okay. All right. So if I am writing a method add and taking two values as inputs to the method, then there must be something from this method if you want to take it back to the calling method. This is a calling method and this is a called method. Main method, main method is calling method. Main method is calling method. Add method is called method. Called method. Called method is when you call the method, that method gets executed. That method is called as called method. A method which is making the call, that is called as calling method. That is called as calling method. So when you write this kind of methods, when you write things as this, we can do definitely pass inputs to the method. And we can definitely take the output. Take the output. Remember this, it is very important. One method can return at max one value or data. We can return at max one value or one data from called method to calling method. Calling method is the method which is making the call to the other method. Called method is the method which got the call from the another method. Okay. So we can return only one value, but we can take n number of inputs. We take only one output. Take the output only one. We can take output only one. So this inputs, whatever right now we are seeing, this is called as passed by value. Whatever we are passing numbers here, this is called as passed by values. Variables are constants. Whatever you pass here, that data is called pass by values. This mechanism is called as pass by value mechanism. This is a very common concept that every Java developer, including testing, automation testing expert, also will use. Passing arguments and receiving the output. Passing inputs, receiving the output. So in this code, where is the output? We have seen these arguments as input. Where is the output here? This is the place where we declare what is the type of output we are going to get. What is the type of output we are going to get? So this is called as return type. This is called as return type, as we have already discussed in the method. Return type. We are returning, after executing this method, we are returning a value from called method to calling method. That is called as return value. Return value. So when you write void, you don't need to return any value. when you write any other data type, you need to return that type of data. For example, if you write a method, public static int subtract, and we take arguments a comma b, then what we should do, we need to write return statement mandatorily. Mandatory, we have to return some value. What value? Integer value. Integer value, integer constant or integer variable. We need to give that. For example, 6, or you can say a minus b. A minus b. So you are returning subtracted value. B value is subtracted from A, and whatever is the result, you are trying to send it back to the person, send it back to the method which is calling this method. So this is the output. When you don't want to return anything, any data, then you use void. Public static void subtract int a comma int b. Int b. So here we are not returning any value back to the calling method. So you can write just return without any value. Without returning any value, you can write a return method. Return statement. Okay, so when you do not return any value from the called method to calling method, in that case, you can mention it as void. But if you want to return some value from the called method to calling method, then you are supposed to have other than void. So what are the different types of return types we can use? As we discussed yesterday, you can use all the data types, including primitive data type and derived data types, both any of these data types, or you can add void. You can write void. So all the data types, including primitive and derived, and then one more is void. So this is mandatory. If you don't write any return type, then you have to keep it as void. So that's what you understood from this definition: access level, non-access level, or access modifier or specifier. This is access specifier. Access specifier, non-access specifier, return type, method name, arguments, and then flower brackets open and close. This is the method body. And statements inside the method is executed line by line. As we have already discussed, series of steps getting executed line by line, put into the one block that is called as method. That is what we already discussed, right? So now let me tell you how it happens inside the memory. For the same program, how the execution will happen inside the memory. So main method, paint. Let me open the paint. So every Java program should be compiled using Java C command file name.java. In this case, add int.java. And every Java program has to be executed using Java command using Java class name. What is the class name? Add int. So when you execute Java add int, what is going to happen in the background? So let me tell you the detailed process. Step number one. Step number one. Java command. Java command is going to load JVM into memory. It is going to load JVM into memory. JVM into memory. JVM is nothing but interpreter. Interpreter. So this is a Java program or a Java tool which will start executing the Java program. The JVM's first rule, the JVM's first rule is search for class name and class file with add int dot class file. It will search for this file. Where does it search? In current directory. In current directory, it is going to search. If it is not found, it will throw an error which is called as runtime error. If not found, it is going to throw runtime error. If not found, runtime error. What is the error? Class not found. Class not found. Main class not found. This is a runtime error. If it finds, what is the next case? What is the next thing it is going to happen? If it finds, it is going to proceed with the second step. If it finds, it is going to proceed with second step. And the second step is search for main method. Search for main method. It will search for main method. What happens if it does not find main method? If not found in class, it will give runtime error. If main method is not found, then it gives runtime error. What is the error? Main method not found. Main method not found. This is another runtime error. Step number one, it will search for the dot class file with the given name, and if it does not find it, it will throw an error, that is runtime error, class not found. If the class is found, it will continue to the step number two, and step number two is searching for main method. Searching for main method. So the step number one, search. Step number one is to search dot class file and load. It will load into the memory. It will load into the memory. If it is not found, as we have already discussed, it's going to give error. It is going to give error. So what is the error? It is a type of runtime error. It is type of runtime error. So in short form, you can call it as RTE. What is the error? Class not found. So if it is found, it will continue to the next step. The next step is searching for main method. Searching for main method. Search main and load. Search main and load. Search main and load. So if it is not found, what it will do? If the method is not found, it is going to throw a runtime error. It is going to throw a runtime error. it is going to throw a runtime error, which is main method not found. Main method not found. Main method not found. If it is found, if method is found, it is going to load into the memory. It is going to load into the memory. After loading it into memory, it will start executing line by line inside the flower braces. Inside the flower braces, how many number of lines are present inside the main method? Each line will be executed. Each statement is executed. Each line is ending with semicolon. Each line is ending with semicolon. So it will execute line by line. So the interpreter is going to execute line by line. Compiler is a wholesome process, whereas interpreter is executing line by line. Compiler only compiles, whereas interpreter compiles the code and executes the code. That is the difference between compiler and interpreter. These are the two differences between compiler and interpreter. So Python is having only interpreter. Java is having both compiler and interpreter. Compiler and interpreter. So what is the first statement in the main method? It is a function call or a method call to the method calling statement. Method calling statement to add method with two arguments. Okay, so what does it do? It will search for, interpreter will search add of 5, 7, which is two arguments. It is going to search for add method. If add method is found, then it is going to load it into the memory. It is going to load it into the memory. So add method is going to be loaded into memory, and here we get two variables, that is a variable and b variable. Now, as we have already discussed, a variable is a memory container or a data container in the memory. It is a data container in the memory. So A is pointing to one memory. And B is pointing to another memory. So this memory will contain integers. So 5 will be stored inside the A. 5 is stored inside the A, and B is storing 7 value. Okay. So at this time, it is having A equal to 5 and B equal to 7. Now it is start executing each line by line. In this, we are calling println method by adding A plus B. So what it is doing is, it will search for println method. It will search for println method. Println method is called with result. What is the result? A value plus B value. So it is going to take some value, some argument. Let's say it is int, right? So let's say it is something internally they have some variable. We do not know what variable they are using, right? So we are calling println method here. We are calling println method here with 5 plus 7, value of 5 plus value of 7. So 5 plus 7, 5 plus 7, 12. So 12 is passed to this yes, and this println statement is printing it to the console. It is printing it to the console. It is printing it to the console. So the output is 12. Output is 12. Now what happens after this? What happens after this? What happens after this? So println statement is executed. After that, there is no statement left out to be executed in add method. So please understand this. Until and unless add method is executed completely, it will not go back. The flow control will not go back to the main method. If there are 1,000 statements, each statement in the 1,000 will be executed one by one. After that, only the flow control will go back to the called method or calling method. Okay, it will go back to the calling method. Until then, it will keep executing these things. So before the call is going to this, it will be halted. The main method execution is halted. So from the main method to complete, it has to complete a add method execution before it completes main method. So main method is stored in the memory until all the lines inside the main method is getting executed, which means add method it should execute completely and then it has to come back to the main method. If add method is not executed completely, main method will not execute its completion, not complete its execution. Okay. So now println method is executed. What it will do? It is going to clean up this memory. It is going to clean up this method from the memory. After that, it is going to check, are there any methods inside add method? There are no more methods. So once it reaches the flower brackets close, method body end, it is going to clean up from the memory. It is going to clean up this memory. These variables will get destroyed. This method will get destroyed from the memory. Now it will go back to the main method. It will go back to the main method. So inside main method, are there any more statements? If there are any statements, it will execute those statements. If there are no statements, and that is the last statement, and it reaches the end of the block, it is going to remove this main method from the memory. After that, it is going to destroy this particular memory. It is going to destroy this particular memory. Okay. All right. So are you able to follow this? This is the execution flow of Java program. Every program that you write, if you understand this way, you will be able to expect the output without any fault. Without any fault, you will be able to find the output of the program. Okay, this is called as tracing or debugging. This is called as tracing or debugging. You are going line by line execution. You are going and checking line by line execution. So sometimes you will say, I have written the code correctly, but I'm not getting the valid output. So what you need to do? You need to go to those lines inside that code, what you have written. You need to check every line, every variable, what is the value it is getting. And you need to find out the variables or Methods which is exactly working on that particular data, what you are passing. Otherwise, you will not be able to find out where is the root cause of the problem. Where is the root cause of the problem? So it is always advisable to do this kind of tracing or debugging. Then you will be able to drill down to the problem and you can fix the root cause. Right? So this is about the execution flow. This is about the Java code execution flow. Are you clear about the method definition and method calling? If you are clear, please type yes in the chat. So let's discuss something about statements. What is a statement? Statement is an executable line of code. Executable line of code. Each statement will end with a semicolon. Each statement will end with a semicolon. So few statements that we have discussed in the earlier sessions are variable declaration. Variable declaration. Here you can see variable declaration, data type and variable name semicolon. Data type, variable and semicolon. So you have to understand why I'm talking about these basic things is when you go to a office, when you go to work, right, you will get a project code. Now there will be nobody to tell you this is how you need to write the code or this is how you need to understand. So it's the skill that you need to learn right now. So every single line of code you have to go through this. And what concept is this? This is a data type. This is a variable. This is a semicolon, which means it's a variable declaration. So you have to remember these concepts. You have to run, you have to understand the code by yourself. You have to understand the code by yourself, right? Then variable declaration with initialization. If you are declaring a data type and the variable name equal to some value, this is called as variable declaration with initialization. Variable declaration with initialization. Then if you can declare a variable and you can initialize it later, so you can split that declaration and initialization later. Don't worry, what is the value of age? That means you are going to get that value later part of Java program execution. When you get execution that statements, you will get the values, right? This is called as assignment statement. This is called as assignment statement. You are using assignment operator to assign value from right hand side to left hand side. So the execution always happen right hand side to left hand side. So right hand side will be the result. That result will be stored in the left hand side. So you can never write in the reverse way. You cannot write constant 21 equals to age. It is never ever possible. Okay, so you can declare multiple variables at the same time in one declaration statement. One declaration statement. You can declare, you can initialize all the variables with one value like this, multiple variable initialization with single value. You can do this. Multiple value declaration and initialization at the same time. So you can use comma as a delimiter or a separator between two variable declaration with initialization. In the same way, here in the top, you can also see multiple variables can be declared with separated with comma. Comma is a delimiter. It is a limiter between two variables. So these are the various declaration statements. Various declaration, initialization, and assignment statements. So you can declare another variable. You can declare another variable int sum equal to add of 5, 7. We have seen return statement, right, of method. So if you are returning that value you are storing in a variable so that you can reuse inside this program, inside the calling method. Inside the calling method, You want to get value back from the another method. That is, one method output is stored in the another variable, so that you can reuse this result anytime inside this program, anytime inside this method, which is calling method, or you can pass the same thing to other methods. That is always possible. So you need to understand this logic. You need to understand this logic. So this is return statement. That return statement is storing that value inside the variable. Okay, is that clear? So this is all about the methods. This is all about the methods. So let us look at the statements. The statements also we have discussed how we declare a variable, how we initialize a variable, how we declare an initialize variable, how do we initialize, assign the value later of point of time, and then how do we retrieve the value from method and store it in this. These are all the statements we can call it as, right? So we have discussed about the statements. So this is all about the statements. So after statements, there are a couple of operators that we need to discuss. So what are the different types of operators in Java, which is supported by Java, right? So let me explain about those. Operators in Java. Operators in Java. So there are broadly three types of operators. Three types of operators. Number one, it is unary operator. Number two, it is binary operator. Number three, it is ternary operator. Unary operator. Unary operator. One operand. One operand and one operator. Binary means two operands and one operator. Okay, two operands and one operator. What about ternary? Ternary is three operands. Three operands. So there are some types of operands like operators like unary, right? Inside unary, there are different types of operators. For example, arithmetic operators. So these arithmetic operators are required two operands. So it is a category of binary operators. It is a category of binary operators. A plus B. This is arithmetic operators, right? A minus B. A multiplied with B. A divided with B. A modulo operator B. So these are all arithmetic operators because there are two operands for this operator. There are two operands for these operators. That's why it is binary operator. Arithmetic is arithmetic operators. Arithmetic operators. Second one, we have relational operators. What are relational operators? Relational operators means you are comparing two things. What is the relationship between these two values? What is the relationship between these two values? So it is always binary or even more than that. Even more than that. Okay. So Is A greater than B, or A less than B, or A is greater than or equal to B, or A is less than or equal to B, A equal to B, and A not equal to B. A not equal to B. These are all relational operators. These are all relational operators. What is the relationship between these two operands? To compare that, to get that kind of comparison between two values or more values, then you can use relational operators. Relational operators. Relational operators. Then what else we have? Logical operator. Logical operator. So what is logical operator? And, or, and, or. These are logical operators. Logical operators. What does that mean? Logical operators. This double and double R. Logical or conditional operators. Logical or conditional operators. What does that mean? When we are performing AND operation, it is must that we need to follow truth table. We have to follow truth table. What is a truth table? What is a truth table? Condition 1, condition 1 and condition 2. When you want to compare these two conditions and the result of both, right? So if the condition is true, if the condition is true and condition 2 is true, then the result is true. If the condition is false, it does not even check for the another condition. Whether it is true or false, it does not matter. True, it is going to result false. If one is false and another one is also false, it generally does not check, or I'll say first one is true and then second one is false. And false. The result is going to be false. And any which ways both are false, then the result is going to be false. This is a truth table of AND operation. Coming to the unary operator, there are two types of operators, which is increment and decrement. Increment and decrement. There are another operators which are called as shorthand operators. Shorthand operators. What are these operators? If you are willing to write A equal to A plus 1 or A plus 2, instead you can write A plus equal to 2, which means it is going to replace this statement with this statement. This is called as shorthand operator. Same is the case. These are all shorthand operators. Shorthand operators. It is going to replace as A equal to A plus 2. And the same here also. A equal to A minus 2. A multiplied by 2. These are shorthand operators. Shorthand operators. These are the different types of operators in Java. These are the different types of operators in the Java. So if you see properly, operators are of three types, which is unary, binary, and ternary. Unary means one operand, binary means two operands, ternary means three operands. Okay, so unary operands, for example, increment or decrement operator. This is a unary operator. Increment or decrement. Increment or decrement operator. Plus plus or minus minus. So again, this can be prefix or postfix. Prefix increment operator or postfix increment operator. Prefix decrement operator or postfix decrement operator. And then shorthand operators are A plus equal to 2, which is going to be result as A equal to A plus 2. Same is the case for subtraction, multiplication, and division modulo operation. So this is called a shorthand operation. Then we have arithmetic operators. Arithmetic operators are binary operators, which is requiring two operands, A plus B, A minus B, A into B, A divided by B, A modulo B. These are all arithmetic operators. Then relational operators. It is going to use it. We are using this relational operator to check the relationship between two operands, whether one operand is greater than another one, or smaller, or greater than or equal to, or smaller than equal to, or double equal to, or is it equal to, or is it not equal to. So this is a relational operator. Then conditional or logical operators, we can use double and or double or. So this is conditional or logical. When two conditions are there, whether it is equal, whether it is true, both the conditions are true or both the conditions are false, what is the result? So in order to find out that, we use truth table. We use truth table. So condition 1 double and condition 2 result. So we are going to check if the condition 1 is true and the condition 2 is true, then the result is true. If one of them is false or both of them is false, result is going to be false. So this is the logical AND. Then this is logical OR. This is logical OR. So condition 1 and condition 2, if both are true or one of them is true, then it is true. If both are false, then the resultant is false. That is the conditional statement of OR. Conditional truth table. Okay. Then we have bitwise operators, as we have already discussed, bitwise operators. And OR, exclusive OR, NOR or not, right shift operators, left shift operators, double right shift operator. So what does that mean? When you have two bytes, that bytes of data, it can be bytes, it can be a decimal, it can be a short, it can be integer, it can be long, it can be float, it can be double, whatever it is. If you want to perform bitwise operations, bitwise and bitwise OR operations, then we are going to use bitwise and bitwise OR operators, or exclusive OR operators, or not operators. Then right shift, left shift, and double right shift operators. These are all bitwise manipulating operators. Lastly, conditional operator or ternary operator. Conditional or ternary operator. The condition we need to check. If this is true, then we have to hold value 1. If this is false, we have to hold value 2. So for this logic, we use this ternary operator. It is having 3 operands. This is operand 1, this is operand 2, this is operand 3. This is all about the operators.